Hello and welcome back to the Woodshop. I have designed up some test tokens which will give me a good residue layer from laser engraving. And I'm going to try some solvents to see if we can get rid of it without damaging the wood. So without further ado, let's get to lasering.
Well, here we are with our two sets of engraving. We have on the left with the air assist off, and on the right, air assist on. Other than that, the settings are the same. You can see on the left side that we've got considerably more residue around the cut, especially where the air flowing over to the dust collection or fume collection at the back there is pulling it over the edge of the cut, and you've got a bit of drag there. You'll notice on the right side that there's a lot more speckling of the cut, and that's where the ablated material has been blown back down onto the cut. Now, part of my Trotec training was that air assist off is the best way to go for doing engraving. That training wasn't really for wood, it was more for doing the two-tone plastics, the lamicoids, as well as acrylic. And having air assist off can help stop this redeposition of the larger particles which have been shot out of the material. But as we can see here, it's definitely a cleaner engrave, which I wasn't really expecting. The point of this is we're going to go and try different solvents to remove residue on here. And with the two different types of residue we've got, which is mostly primarily resin and other sticky stuff on the left here, and a little bit of resin and chunky stuff on the right here, it's going to be really interesting to see. So we've got sets for isopropanol, acetone, white spirit, water, and degreaser. It's difficult to read those at the moment, but I'm hoping this is going to come up a bit cleaner. We're going to try these solvents. The reason I've gone for these solvents over, say, the most ideal solvent to get rid of laser residue from wood is going to be D-limonene, which is found in all your citrus degreasers and citrus cleaners. I don't want to have solvent damage the wood, and I know that that will. I've got the degreaser in here because it's something which I just want to try. I know it's not going to be possible to wash it out of the wood or dry it out of the wood, whereas all of the other solvents will evaporate out of the wood and leave the wood unchanged. So your isopropyl alcohol, acetone, white spirit, and water will all evaporate away and leave the wood as it was. The degreaser is a very soapy substance. It is going to stay on the wood. It may affect finishes in the future. The others will not affect finishes in the future. I didn't go with the D-limonene because, or other citrus cleaners which are going to remove the residue, because I don't know what they would do to a finish which would apply later on. Therefore, there's no point having a good clean finish on here if it ruins any future processing you want to do. Anyway, let's go and grab some solvents and we'll have a look and see what we can do. I'm going to start out with isopropyl alcohol or isopropanol, also known in some countries as denatured alcohol. I'm getting a blue shop towel and I'm just going to soak that very thoroughly in the solvent. In the process, wetting our little plate. That's okay. And we'll get our two samples here, and I'm just going to scrub them across with the grain. See if we can get them cleaned up at all. Now this would perhaps go better with a brush of some sort, like a toothbrush, but I don't have one of those here, so I'm going to just use the paper towel, see how we go. That's the isopropanol done. We'll move on next to white spirit. Now, I'm really not expecting a great deal out of the white spirit, but we'll see. This is also known as turpentine in some countries, mineral turpentine, paint thinners, commonly in Canada and North America sold as Varasol. Next up is water. I'm using distilled water here. Universal solvent. Oh yeah, we can see there's a good bit of colour coming off that one. Now water will raise the grain in most woods, but it won't damage it, and it will dry, and it will leave the grain looking just fine. Okay, what should we do next? We'll look at Degreaser. I want to leave the acetone to the last because it's going to destroy my gloves. This is heavy duty degreaser. It is meant to be watered down prior to use. I have not done that. This may damage the wood, it may damage finish, which is applied after the fact. So this is sort of just a I'm curious to see rather than one I'd actually consider using. It is extremely strong, cannot touch skin and such, so it's pretty nasty stuff. But it's working exceptionally well. Okay, put that one aside. And then I'm going to add a second set of gloves before going to the acetone, because the acetone will destroy the nitrile and may eat through. Here's the acetone. I'm going to have to re-wet this quite a bit because acetone off-gases and evaporates extremely fast. So to keep this wet, I'm going to have to keep adding more. Okay, that's them done. Let's get these dried out and come back and have a look later on. Now that they've all dried off, let's have a look. Most notably is the degreaser ones. The degreaser significantly discolored the wood to the point I wouldn't even think about using that again. Isopropyl alcohol, denatured alcohol, whatever you want to call it, did some, but not a huge amount. This sample down here, which is obviously the cleanest by far, was with a piece of masking tape over it. So the masking tape caught all the residue and is therefore the cleanest, but that does pull up the fibers somewhat. Acetone was quite effective over here, but there is still some residue remaining. White spirit did absolutely nothing whatsoever. Water was very interesting. It did take a lot of the residue, but it also allowed the residue to leach into the wood itself. So it's cleaned away pretty much everything, including the residue in the bottom, but it's also discolored the wood considerably because of it. Not to the point that the degreaser did. The degreaser also removed pretty much everything, but it also made a very dirty slurry of rubbish, and I also don't know how well that would finish because degreaser is quite soapy, so I don't know if you were to put a finish on there, it would work. So obviously the most optimal solution is a piece of masking tape or masking transfer film on top of your material, but if you're doing extremely complicated engraves which have a lot of details to weed, you may not make that a possibility, especially if you're doing photo engraves. So water is a interesting way of going. Acetone is probably the good halfway point between water and just clean, because the acetone does decrease the amount of residue, but it doesn't do what the water does as far as spreading it throughout. You could also sand these pieces. Sanding is a very, very effective way of removing it, but if you've got a lot of very fine details which are not very deep, then sanding will remove those and be completely irrelevant. I hope you find that of some use and maybe an interesting little experiment. If you're interested in seeing more laser engraving videos, tips and tricks, check out some of our other videos. If you like what you see, consider subscribing. Love to have you along for the journey. Make sure you hit the bell for notification. If you've got any other solvents which you think would be worth trying and won't mess with a finish on the material, so not degreaser, leave a comment below. And if you found this helpful, leave a like. Thank you very much. Have a great day.